This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity to learn a bit together, prepare for receiving the Torah. Thanks to Rabbi Rittenberg and your organization. Wonderful what Emet does. Fantastic operation, very impressive, and it's a pleasure to be part of that. In preparing to receive Torah, let's just talk about one mitzvah, just one. Let's talk about the mitzvah of emunah. That's the first and most basic, fundamental. Everything we do depends on that. That's the core. It's the first of the 10 Commandments. Let's talk about the difficulties presented by this mitzvah. Is that okay? Yeah? Anyone? Try to understand this a little bit more deeply. Also a little bit of a mystical dimension. Let's ask a few questions about emunah. The question that everyone asks really is, can you know? Can you know that Hashem exists? Can you know? I work in Kiruv, right? So-called outreach. When people come in, that's the question they're asking. They may ask it explicitly. They may not ask it explicitly. They want evidence. They want proof. They want to know. They want to commit their lives to something meaningful. And they want to know, is it true? And whichever way you answer that question, you're in trouble. If you say you can know, why do you call it faith? Emunah means belief. The word in English means something you cannot know. A blind faith, blind belief, leap of faith. Would you agree? Emunah means something that you believe. The fact that you're sitting in front of me is not something I believe, it's something I know. What's on the other side of this wall I have to believe? Belief means something you cannot know for sure. Now, that's the definition of the word. So if you can know Hashem, you can know that Hashem exists, that God exists, and all that flows from that proposition, then call it knowledge. It's true the knowledge may take time to get. Knowledge doesn't mean you have to have it at first sight, but it's still called knowledge. When I was a first-year medical student, the first thing that happened to me was they put the thing on the patient's chest, they put it in my ears, they said, listen to the heart. I listened carefully, I couldn't hear a heart. I heard my fingers creaking, I heard the buses in the street, I heard the nurses talking, I couldn't hear the heart. I might have been a doctor. But after doing that for many years, I can hear it clearly. And with a lot of expertise and experience, I can see those valves moving and the blood flowing. And that's all I hear. Now, I took it on faith in the beginning. It was clearly belief. But you don't call that belief, you call it knowledge. It may take you time to get the knowledge and practice. Okay, but eventually you get to a knowledge. So if you can know that Hashem exists, why do we call it blind belief? And if you cannot know it, why should I do it? Why should I commit my life? And maybe even have to die someday, for something that I cannot know. And not only that, how could you begin to discuss and argue religion with somebody else if it's just a personal, warm, fuzzy emotion? I live in England today. There it's considered impolite to argue about religion. What right do you have to argue about somebody else's religion? He believes what he believes. You believe what you believe. It's both cool. And if you believe two opposite things, it's also cool. Which means there's no objectivity at all. Right? Is that the Jewish position? I don't think so. So let me get the question clear again. There's nothing more important than this. Can you know for sure that Hashem exists and all that we claim? Or can you not know it? If you can know it, why do we call it blind faith? If you cannot know it, why should I do it? Are we all clear about the question? Any questions about the question? Okay, let's think through this. By the way, we live in a Christian world. Even the fact that we speak English means that our heads are Christian. You know that. English, a language, is soaked in the culture that it expresses, right? Language is not a neutral thing. English is steeped in Christian thinking. All the English words you use give you a Christian idea. You say God. As soon as you say the word God, you see a man in the sky with a white beard. You talk about angels. You see little children flapping through the air with little white wings. If I talk about somebody who's a saint, see a person with a little gold ring levitating over their head. But there's no way to think like a Jew when you speak a language like English. You're speaking the language of a culture. And emunah means blind belief, and that's our culture. In Christian thinking, belief is something that is personal, subjective, blind, leap of faith, decided on the basis of your own emotional inner convictions. It doesn't have to be logical. You know, one of the popular topics in intellectual debate today is the argument between science and religion. You see that everywhere. Watch carefully, you'll see in those debates the people arguing are always very well qualified scientifically and often have no religious knowledge at all. Time magazine, a couple of years ago, they ran a debate between Richard Dawkins, who's a very atheistic biologist, and Francis Collins, who's a very religious Christian geneticist. World-famous individuals, exquisitely qualified scientifically. No, neither of them have any religious training or knowledge at all. Dawkins wrote a book about religion that the critics say is less than childish. How do you talk about a subject at the highest level when you know nothing about it? The answer is that religion is not something you have to know in their book. It's simply a personal feeling. Here's an example. I was traveling overnight on a long, tiring flight from London to Johannesburg, 10.5 hours. I turn out to be sitting next to a man who tells me that he's an Episcopalian charismatic preacher. Don't ask me what it is, but it's Christian. And he spent 10.5 hours trying to convert me to Christianity. Thanks. Vodka? Vodka? It was a long night. So about 2:30 in the morning, he begins to explain to me that the founder of Christianity, JC, is descended from the house of David. You know, it's critical for the Messiah to be descended from Yehuda through David, because he has to be Mashiach ben David. So the carpenter Joseph in Bethlehem, right, the father of that individual, so the Gospels all prove that he was descended. They trace the genealogy to prove that this man Joseph, the father of the founder of Christianity, was in fact descended from the house of David. So I said to him, but surely you as a Christian believe that his father was not involved in his birth? Problem? He said to me, what does logic have to do with religion? He told me that in his book, the less logical, the better, because it's a greater act of faith. In Judaism, that's ridiculous. In Judaism, religion is something you have to know. It has to be rigorously logical with corroborated evidence. About 10 years ago in Yerushalayim, they arranged a debate between science and religion at a very high level. The first speaker was a world-famous astrophysicist, unfortunately Jewish. He's an atheistic person. He's a assimilated Jew. But he was the first speaker. World famous, I think he's a Nobel Prize winner. He got up and he said, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know much about religion. Can you imagine beginning a debate that way? You invited Yerushalayim to debate at the highest level. Your opening statement is you know nothing about the subject. He began like this. I don't know much about religion, but I think it can be summed up as do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And on the basis of that assumption, he gave his talk. The next speaker was Rabbi Refson. He's an English rabbi with a very dry sense of humor. He got up and he said, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know much about astrophysics, but I think it can be summed up as twinkle, twinkle, little star. You know, if you're going to talk about a subject, you ought to know about it, right? Okay. So the position is, we find ourselves in a world where they talk about religion as a warm, fuzzy, personal feeling. It does not have to be logical. Is that the Jewish position? No. So let me try to express the way we approach the subject. In Judaism, God's existence is something that you can know and you must know. The Rambam says, mitzvah leida sheyesha matzah. It's a mitzvah to know that there's a first cause of the world. You have to know it. You can know it and you have to know it. Want me to smile? Can you take a break for a minute? Thank you. You have to know it. That leaves us with two questions. Question one, how do you get the knowledge? And question two, why do you call it blind faith? Those are the questions. How do you get the knowledge? I'm not going to go into that fully. I'll just give you a few ideas and references. We have many avenues of access to knowledge of Hashem's existence, but the two most important that are formal are one, the Sinai experience and the transmission of that story to us, and secondly, certain philosophical scientific investigations of the world. Both need extensive discussion. There are wonderful books on this. Rabbi Kellerman has books on this. Rabbi Gottlieb 6 months ago published a book called Reason to Believe, which is an analysis of the Kuzari, which is a classic work, 600 years old, on how this record could have been falsified through history and we could come have a Torah that's not true. Fantastic classic works. But let me just tell you one or two ideas. First of all, by the way, just as an aside, do you know that the Sinai revelation is the only time in the history of the world, say that again, it's the only time in the history of humankind that any human has ever claimed that God spoke to them with even one witness present. Do you know that? There's not one recorded case. There's all sorts of cases of people claiming that God spoke to them privately, right? I'm not talking about miracles. I've seen witch doctors in South Africa do things that are physically impossible with my own eyes. I'm talking about God spoke to me. Christianity begins with Paul's famous vision on the Damascus Road. He came back to the Jews and he said, God spoke to me. The Jews said, and who was with you during that revelation? He said it was private. The Jews said, not good enough for us. Muhammad came out of his tent and he said that Allah spoke to him. The Jews said, and who was with you? He said it was private. They said, not good enough for us. If you go to Utah, there's a religion there that tens of thousands of people follow because one man claimed a revelation. The Torah said 3,329 years ago, 3,330 years ago. The Torah said, has God ever taken one nation out of a nation like I took you out of Egypt? Or hanishma kamohu? Or has there ever been claimed such a claim? The Torah 3,000 years ago said that never will there be a claim even that someone was spoken to by God with even one witness. And for sure somebody's lying. One of them's for sure lying. And if you're lying, you might as well pay a witness. Nobody has ever claimed that they had a witness. We say millions of people saw the same thing. It's remarkable. But what bothers people much more than that is, how can you rely on the story? Okay, there's a claim. When you tell a story through thousands and thousands of years, there's no way it can be accurate. No way. If I whisper in your ear and you whisper it in his, by the time it gets back to that, we have nothing to do with the original story. You can show that easily. How do we trust a story wending its way through the mists of time through thousands of years? There's no way it can be accurate. You know this problem. If you read the anti-Semitic literature, you know what they say? There was a group of Abrahamic types in the desert, a small family, probably smoking something very good, eating magic mushrooms. They had visions, and over years it became embellished, and today it's the Torah. That's the claim. Correct? You heard that kind of claim? You never heard that? Definitely. Definitely. There was some sort of experience, right? Some sort of magical experience, and people embellished it like people do. They exaggerated. And today it's the Torah. Listen carefully. That's an incompetent claim. Listen very carefully. When your children ask you, or you work in outreach, and people say, Rabbi, there's no way that a story can be transmitted accurately. That's an incompetent claim, and let me tell you why. Listen carefully. This is fundamental. You need to know this. First of all, let's take a round number. Let's call Sinai 3,200 years ago. Let's call one generation 40 years. Enough time for parents to tell their children, even tell their grandchildren. How many times does 40 divide into 3,200?
80.
Only 80. That's all. The Rambam, Maimonides, lists the leader of every generation from Sinai to his day, and in every case we have the original writings of each generation. We know exactly who they were, and for more than 2,000 years, we not have the writings, we have the original parchments, and they're the same. If you go to, I just wrote a book, it came out this week, it's called As Dawn Ends the Night. You'll see the back of the book has a historical chart, and you can see the generations and the linkages clearly, right? That book's so important you need to buy 2 copies. But anyway, it's not in the stores yet, it's on its way, it just got shipped from Israel this week. But the point is that if you go to the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Dead Sea Scrolls in Yerushalayim were found, they're more than 2,000 years old. There's a fragment of every book of Tanakh in those, except for the Megillah of Esther. And the same as we have today. My friend Rabbi Tatz told me he took his kids there. His 10-year-old son climbed up on a box. He looked into the glass case. He started reading a scroll of Isaiah, a scroll of Yeshaya. That's 2,100 years old. He said, Abba, we learned this 10 days ago in school. Rabbi Tatz said the real miracle is that the kid remembers what he learned 10 days ago in school. But here's a Jewish child in the modern era reading a parchment of Isaiah. That's 2,000. It's exactly the same as we have today. Do you know that the difference between an Ashkenazi and a Sephardi Sefer Torah is one letter? One letter. And we've been separated for way over 2,000 years. Geographically isolated. Do you know, the only difference is the word Daka spelled with the Aleph or with the Hey. Not bad for 3,329 years. Right? Amazing. Do you know, I live in England now, and twice I've been into the Cairo Geniza. Do you know about the Geniza? Unbelievable thing. Do you know, in 1896 in Fostat in Cairo, where the Rambam lived, in the women's section of the synagogue, of the shul, they found a hole in the wall. And behind that wall, they found a room in which the community had been keeping documents for nearly 2,000 years. In that room, they found 300,000 documents from the Jewish community of Cairo, letters received from all over the Jewish world, handwriting of the Rambam, letters from the Rambam's brother to him, business signature of Rav Yosef Karo, letters from the Arizal. 185 of the, if you want to read a book about it, how they found it, it's a fantastic book. It's called Sacred Trash. Wonderful book that gives you the history. Sacred Trash. Look it up. It's amazing. The first copy of Ben Sira was found there intact. Unbelievable. 185,000 of those documents are in Cambridge University in a special a library called the Gniza. I went in there myself. I held in my hands a piece of a Sefer Torah written in the year 600. That's before Islam became a religion. There's hundreds of Haggadahs there, Haggadot. By the way, their Haggadah from the year 1000 has 5 questions, not 4. The 5th question is, why don't we eat roasted meat on this night? But it's clearly the same, right? There are 400 marriage documents of women getting married in Cairo to Karaites, which the Rambam put a stop to the year that he arrived. There's a hechsher on cheese given to a Karaite Jew. They made him swear on Sefer Torah because the Karaim didn't accept anything else. There's unbelievable, the last letter that the Rambam's brother wrote to him. You know, the Rambam's brother, David, supported the family. And then his ship sank and he died. And the Rambam studied medicine to support the family. The last letter that his brother wrote, you can hold the parchment in your hands. It says, this is your brother David. I'm writing to you. I'm about to get on the ship and come and see you. I'm sending the letter. The ship sank. The Rambam, and you can hold this letter in your hands. The last few lines are smudged, and they think it's the Rambam's tears. You can hold it in your hands. It's an unbelievable corroborated. By the way, there's only one document there that's in color. It's a sirah of a child from the year 1100. And on the front page, the kid has practiced Aleph, 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 Bet, 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 and he sketched a little picture of himself on his camel. You can hold Jewish history in your hands. That's incredible corroboration. People tell you, yeah, it's a vague, embellished story. What are you talking about? It's a rigorously corroborated story, richly corroborated through all time. And you're talking about documents there from Yemen and Tunis and Africa and from Poland and from the whole Ashkenazi world. Unbelievable. So people tell you it's an embellished story. It's an incredibly... First of all, can you imagine all Jews agreeing about anything? I mean, they're definitely miraculous, you know. So the transmission from Sinai is a very, very important principle, and there are classic works on this, and there's a lot to say about this. But I'll leave you to that research yourself. I want to talk about something else, which is the mitzvah of emunah. So stay with me carefully. If you can know it, we have a corroborated story, a very cogent, cohesive story. Why do we call it faith? Okay, listen carefully. Why do we use a word that means blind faith or blind belief? If you can know it, talk about knowledge. Here's the answer. Belief. Emunah does not mean belief. Emunah does not mean faith. That's a Christian translation. The word emunah does not mean faith. It means faithfulness. Faithfulness. Emunah, to be ne'eman. Let me explain what this means. First of all, let me prove it to you. I'll prove to you that the word faith, emunah, does not mean blind belief. We don't value blind belief. What we value is faithfulness, attachment, loyalty, commitment. Let me explain. First of all, I'll prove it to you textually. That when the Torah uses the word emunah, see how you translate it. You remember when Moshe Rabbeinu is holding his hands up in the battle against Amalek? Remember that? As long as his hands are up, we win. His hands sink, we lose. The Torah says, "V'hayu yadav emunah ad bahashamesh." His hands were emunah. His hands were faith. His hands were faithful. They stayed put. Another example. Avram is speaking to Hashem. Avram Avinu. During the conversation, the Torah says, "Ve'emin b'Hashem." The English Bible translates it as, "and he believed in God." A prophet doesn't believe in God. He's speaking to him. It means he was faithful to this God, even when asked to kill his own child. What do you say in the morning when you wake up? Modeh ani lefanecha. And what do you say? Rabba emunatecha. Great is your belief. God doesn't believe. God is your faithfulness. You're reliable. You're loyal. I gave you my soul last night. You gave it back to me. Is this clear? Emunah doesn't mean blind belief. What's the value of a leap of you leaping off cliffs because you think it's a good idea? Emunah means faithfulness. Let me try to explain. Not to translate things in a non-Jewish way. Emunah means that a Jew has to get the knowledge. Rigorous, logical, historical verification. It's got to make sense. And you ask the deepest questions. When you're dealing with the truth, you can afford to ask questions. But here's the problem. Once you get the knowledge, and you've got it clear in your head, are you going to walk the walk? Will you be faithful to the knowledge? Will you live up to it? Will you bring it down into the organs of emotion and action? That's the problem. Again, first you get clarity. You investigate Judaism. You ask the most penetrating questions. You can ask anything. Not to attack. You have to ask to know. But once you get it clear, and by the way, listen carefully, when we say you can have knowledge, we do not mean absolute knowledge. You can never know for sure. You will never know for sure that Hashem exists. There's nothing you can know absolutely for sure. Not because the evidence is weak, but because your mind is incapable of absolute knowledge. There's nothing you can ever know for sure. I'll prove it to you very easily. I'll ask you a very simple question. Are you awake right now? I mean, those of you who are. Are you awake right now? Okay. Are you sure? Okay. Are you absolutely sure? No. You might be back at home in bed dreaming that you're listening to a very good talk on the subject of Emunah. When you dream, you think you're awake, don't you? Don't you? Yeah. Of course you do. When you're dreaming, you can go through ecstasy or abject terror. Why are you terrified in a dream? Because you think you're awake. If you knew you were sleeping, it would be a free horror movie. You'd just be enjoying it. So listen, if you're sleeping and you dream and you think you're awake, how do you know you're awake now? If this bothers you, you need therapy. I mean, But you cannot be sure you're awake. Isn't that amazing? You never know. What? You can smell when you're in a dream. You can dream you're smelling.
Well, I heard one of the senses isn't...
Which one?
I don't know.
Yeah, you know because it's not right. You can dream anything that you can experience, and there's no way to know you're awake. Isn't that scary? What? Do you know how dreams work? I've got news for you. If you let people dream for 3 seconds, you know that? It's done in sleep research. You let people fall asleep, you wait till the eyes start moving. And as it starts, you let them dream for 3 seconds and wake them up. And they tell you a long story. It happened over days and weeks and months. Yes, that's what happened. And you know why? Listen to this. Since you raised the question, this is for you. Why do we dream? Listen carefully. This is amazing. This will change your life. What I'm about to tell you will change you forever. Why do we dream? How cruel is it of Hashem to put us into a world that is illusory? We call this Alma de Shikra. It's an illusory world. It's a false world. One day you're going to move out of this world to a real world, and you'll realize this was all lies. How cruel is it of Hashem to put us into a world of illusion and then put us into an illusion in the illusion? Let's listen carefully. This is amazing. Hashem puts us into a world of illusion, and then you go to sleep and you have this experience of terrifyingly real reality, and then you wake up in bed shaking and sweating. That was only illusion. This is real. Why would he do that to you? Why would he put you in a world of illusion into an illusion in the illusion? You see the problem? Listen to the answer. It's amazing. The answer is this. Everything you ever experience is meant to teach you about Hashem. He wants you to learn about Him. He wants you to know about the spiritual world. He's not interested. He wants this world only to be a basis for learning about spirituality and for rising into that world. And the most important thing you need to know about this world is that it's temporary and illusory. And it's only here to earn a permanent world. But imagine you walk up to one of your friends and you say, I went to this talk at Emet the other night, and the person there said that this world is illusory. It's just an illusion. One day it's going to be real. Your friend will say, do me a favor. I'm a realist. I use my experience. How can I trust a story like that? Hashem says, you know what? Go to sleep. I'll show you. And you go to sleep. And in that sleep you have a dream, and it's terrifyingly real. And then suddenly you sit up in bed shaking and swearing, Baruch Hashem, that was only a dream, now I'm awake. Are you sure? Once you've ever been through that once in your life, and you realize that a real experience turned out to be nothing, how could you ever deny that you're living in a reality now that will never change? Hashem doesn't play unfair. He doesn't expect you to relate to things that you can't experience. He gives you an experience, utterly real. And you realize, and for you, dreams take long periods of time. They happen in seconds. Isn't that life? Where's all your years that have gone by now? It's a wisp of memory. That's all. And the older you get, the faster it happens. Anyway, that is why we dream. So, we live in a world where you cannot know anything for sure. And when we say you can know Hashem exists, I don't mean absolutely. I mean there's compelling evidence. It doesn't get better than that. Somebody said to me, Rabbi, I accept 95% of evidence in the rest of my life. Right? Medical decisions, even dangerous things, trusting a surgeon, flying on a plane, doing something really dangerous like getting married. You never know for 100% for sure. All you have is good enough evidence. When the evidence is good enough, you act. Rabbi, I accept 95% evidence in the rest of my life. In religion, I want 100%. I can't deliver the goods. And the Ramban says, by the way, when it comes to Torah and religion, the evidence is not even as good as it is in mathematics and engineering. It's not that kind of evidence. So we are not claiming proof. We are claiming evidence. We have very compelling evidence. Don't advertise proof. And when you run a Kiruv organization, don't advertise a seminar where you'll prove it. Come to my seminar on Friday afternoon, you'll walk in as a skeptic, and Sunday night you'll walk out as an ultra-Orthodox fanatic blow-drying your payas. You're doing a disservice to people, because you won't provide proof, and they'll be worse than they were before. That's the evidence. Don't do that. Advertise good evidence. That's all we have. Like the rest of your life, we have better evidence, vastly better than any alternative. Vastly better. This is built on one person's testimony. Ours is built on a transmission of millions of people, corroborated time and again. Is that proof? No. Is it good evidence? Unbelievable. Okay, now here comes the question. If you have knowledge, and you have to get the knowledge, and emunah means being loyal to the knowledge, well, isn't that obvious? Isn't it obvious if you see the truth clearly in this direction, you're going to walk in that direction? Who would not be loyal to what they know is true? What intelligent human being would see that the truth lies in this direction as close to absolutely as you get and decide to walk in that direction? Who would be so foolish? The answer is you. Because we are built in such a way that we can see the truth as clearly as it gets and completely ignore it and betray the truth. We do it all the time. No matter how important and how clear. I see some doubtful faces. I'll prove it to you. I'll show you a person watching the truth in one direction that is as clear as it gets. And I'll show you a person turning in an opposite, which evidence, looking at something trivial and ridiculous and childish, and they'll go in that direction. Let me give you an example. Ever tried dieting? Here's how it goes. On the one hand is your diet. The way you want to be, the way you want to look, your health, relationships, next summer on the kosher beach. Like, important and clear. You know if you follow this program, you guaranteed results. Correct? On the other hand, you've got this little chocolate wedge thing with a bit of cream and a cherry, which will give you 10 seconds of pleasure during which you'll feel like a jerk. How could you get that wrong? And a minute later, you're looking at a plate that is licked clean. Like, what happened? It wasn't clear enough? The answer is it's a long way from here to here, or here, wherever the problem is. The Greeks call this akrasia, the gap between the head and the heart. The head does not guarantee the heart. There are two efforts of will. There's an effort of will that requires clarification. Get the evidence for Judaism clear, and that will not guarantee that your life will follow. There's another effort of will to bring it down into the organs of action and be loyal, emunah, to be ne'eman to what you know. I'll never forget the experience of being an intern in medicine surgery. I had a patient in my hospital who had Berger's disease. This is a exquisite genetic susceptibility to nicotine in cigarette smoke. People who have this disease, if they smoke, their blood vessels close down. First their fingers fall off, then their hands fall off. There's not one recorded case in a non-smoker. They stop smoking, the disease arrests. They carry on smoking, their body falls apart. Every vascular surgeon has patients like this. This patient was a 45-year-old, highly intelligent engineer. He had a blue leg. The main artery to his leg had been closing down. He had 4 black toes we cut off that day. This man knew that if he carried on smoking, we'd have to cut his leg off. He carried on smoking heavily, and 3 weeks later, we were forced to do an above-knee amputation. I'll never forget. It was the first one I saw. A year later, I noticed them wheeling him down the hospital corridor in a wheelchair, smoking heavily, with no legs, about to lose an arm. When I told this to a group of doctors in New York, one of them told me he had a patient like this, that when he lost his second arm, he had his friends rig up some wire on the wheelchair so he could carry on smoking. But how do you do this? Just let's understand. The man takes his cigarette and he says, cigarette or leg? Leg, cigarette. Cigarette, leg. Leg, leg? Man, husband, father, walk, leg? Or 30 seconds of pleasure during which you'll feel the cold hand of death? Then how could you get that wrong? The answer is you can. This does not guarantee this. And that's the human problem. The first effort in Judaism is get the evidence clear. Don't take it on blind faith. Get it clear. But the second problem is, once you've got it clear and you've got the evidence, will you live it? Will you walk the walk? Will you put your money where your mouth is? Will you be loyal? Will you have emunah, which means faithfulness? Is there a leap of faith? Yes, there is. In all non-Jewish translations, there's a bit of truth. Where's the leap of faith? You don't leap off cliffs because you think it's a good idea. Here's the leap of faith. When Hashem asks you to do something, you know what he asks? God asks you to do something, he couldn't make it any clearer. It's as clear as it gets. But when it comes to doing it, it's a leap of faith. The first journey that was ever undertaken by a human being, what does it go? Hashem says, Lech lecha, said to Avram, Lech lecha mi'atzara, go to yourself, Lech lecha, become who you must become. He's talking about the human journey. Where from? Your father's place, your house, your birthplace, your country, utterly clear. Where to? You'll see when you get there. That's blind. That's the leap of faith. Why? Is Hashem playing games? Imagine you walk out of here this evening, lost in thought, I hope, and a big hand, and you turn around, you're facing Hashem. Hashem says, I'd like you to do me a favor. Whatever you say. I'd like you to take a bus down to the Rocky Mountains tomorrow, climb the highest peak and jump off. But I'll catch you. What would you do tomorrow? You did, wouldn't you? You're talking to Hashem himself. So you take the bus and you climb up and you go, no. That's called the leap of faith. That's called bitachon. Knowing that Hashem told you and you must do it is called emunah. Leaping the leap is called bitachon. That's blind. We don't leap off cliffs because we think it's a good idea. We leap off cliffs because we've got the best evidence in the world. But having to leap, why does Hashem not show you why does He require you to leap before you see the other side? Because here's the reason. When Hashem says to Avraham Avinu, go unto yourself, He cannot show him the destination. The destination is the bigger, more mature, greater individual that you would become. You can't be shown that while you're immature. Imagine taking a 5-year-old and you explain to him what he'll be like when he's 25. He thinks you mean more ice cream. Do you understand? Avraham Avinu cannot possibly see the bigger person that he will be until he shatters the constraints of his limitations and his immaturity. It's not Hashem's playing a game. He can't show you what you will be. These rabbis, they see it all the time in the Kiruv world. A person comes in and he starts following a religious pathway. You know how heroic that is? Who knows what he'll have to deal with and what family relationships he'll have to change? Who knows where it will take him in the world? Of course he knows he has to do it. It's true, it's Torah. And he sees it clearly. Vastly better than anything else. But what will it feel like? Where will it take you? You'll see when you get there. Let's take the next step. Is the message clear? Now let's take the next step. And this is for the ladies. The Zohar says, written a long time ago, 2,000 years ago, discovered later. The Zohar says this. This thing, says the Zohar, is called male. This thing is called female. The language of the Zohar, Ihu emet, ve'ihi emunah. Amazing statement. The Zohar says, getting it clear in your head, this is why men characteristically study Talmud. The male effort, I'm not talking about men, I'm talking about male, there's no real men left. And I don't know about women. I'm talking about male. Male means clarity, like Hashem. And female means walking the walk of pregnancy. Long day after day. You know, male and female are completely opposite. We live in a world that's completely confused. I don't know, maybe in America it's not like that. I don't know. The world, this generation has got no idea what's male, what's female. I mean, you've got to choose now, you know. But male means clarity. And female means making it happen. Think about the conception of a child. When a child is born, what does the father give? Half a genetic code, that's all. No pain, no loyalty, no staying power, no strength of character, nothing, zero. And what does the mother give day after day of pregnancy? Building that child cell by cell, molecule by molecule, going through the difficulty and discomfort of pregnancy, going through the risk and danger of giving birth. That's all the woman. She does it all. She's na'eman. She's got emunah. She brings it down into action, even when it's not clear at all. You know how unclear it is? When a child's conceived, there's nothing unclear. The father gives a code, genes, begins. No problem at all. When a woman gives birth at the end of the journey, you know what it looks like? The Rambam, who is a doctor, describes it like this, something like this. When a woman gives birth, it looks like two people are dying. First, it looks like the mother's dying. I mean, I don't mean to put you off, ladies. It's wonderful. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. I always say to the men, imagine you're wandering the corridors of your local hospital looking for the accounts department, when you accidentally stumble into the labor ward and you watch a woman giving birth, which you've never seen before. You know, you think it's got something to do with a stalk. And you watch this process, you know, you'd probably call the police. I don't know, you'd need therapy. And if you had to go through it yourself, you would never recover, that's for sure. But that's nothing compared to what the baby goes through. In a mother's body, do you know what the child goes through? Do you know a child in the womb lives exactly opposite to what it needs to be when it's born? The child lives underwater, he's got holes in his heart, the blood flows in the wrong direction, he's got blood vessels coming out through his liver, he's got the wrong sort of blood. The biggest blood vessel in the body takes the blood away from the lungs instead of to the lungs. He's got no lungs, they're little bits of tissue scrunched up. He's got 20 conditions that keep him alive underwater in his mother's body, every one of which is guaranteed to kill him within 2 minutes when he's born. And you have got 20 conditions in your body that keep you alive, that you gave him to the baby in the womb would kill him immediately. A child when he's born isn't little that gets bigger. He changes phase from life to death, complete opposite, within 2.5 minutes. So the baby's born. I've delivered dozens of babies. You deliver this little baby, you hold him in your hands. First of all, he goes blue, then he goes purple, then he starts making these terrible gasping movements. He's dying in front of your eyes. A newborn child has about this much blood. That's all. About this much blood. And he's bleeding like crazy. There's no way this child can survive. And suddenly, after about 2 minutes, you hold this baby in your hands, the cord clamps down like a cable of steel and stops the bleeding. The holes in the heart close, the blood reverses direction. The blood vessel away from the lungs closes down, the blood hits the lungs. At the same moment, he takes his first breath. And 3 minutes later, it's all reversed and he's doing fine. That must have taken a good few orangutans in the trees to get right during evolution. You know. There must have been a lot of chimpanzees that didn't make it. Some accident. And a mother goes through that. That's why on Friday night we sing to our wives, Eshit Chayil. Does Friday do that? Yes. Definitely. Because a woman has been through the reversal, and Friday night is when the week becomes Shabbat. It's a premonition of birth. It's looking forward to Chevlei Mashiach, when the world will turn upside down, where we'll all be a woman and have to give birth to that reversal. It will look impossible. When Mashiach comes, it will look impossible. Do you know what the Midrash says? Listen to this. You better know this, you have to be prepared. The Midrash says, this was written nearly 2,000 years ago. The Midrash says, just before the Mashiach arrives, the Arabs will have a place built on the Temple Mount. This was written centuries before Islam became a religion. They were nomadic people in the desert. The Midrash says, the Bnei Yishmael will have a building on the Hara. How did the Chazal know that? Email me, I'll send you the text. There are a few Midrashim that say this. Just before the Mashiach arrives, the leaders of the Jews go to the Arabs and they say to them, remove your building, we want to rebuild the temple. The Arabs say, no, it's our holy site. Sound familiar? Then the Arabs turn to the Jews and they say, let's not battle, let's make a divine test. Let's see who God wants. We trust Hashem, we've got amazing emunah, in case you hadn't noticed. Unbelievable emunah. Stronger. Did you hear recently they're starting to kill themselves as families? Did you read this week? The mother took the 2 kids and blew them up. The father took 2 boys, like a whole family, blew itself up. But total emunah. So they say to the Jews, you Jews build an altar, a mizbech, put a korban on, a sacrifice. We'll do the same. And let's see if fire comes min hashamayim for which of our offerings. But we make a deal with you. If Hashem accepts your offering, we'll follow the Torah. And if Hashem accepts ours, you follow our religion. And the Jews agree. The Midrash says the Arabs built, Bnei Ishmael built a mizbech, they put a sacrifice on. The Jews put a sacrifice on theirs. And fire comes min hashamayim to accept the Arabs' offering. It's a test of emunah. When a woman's giving birth, it doesn't look like she's having a picnic. The Arabs turn to the Jews. They say, we had a deal. The Jews say, never. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. There's a terrible battle. Those who survive flee to the desert. And after 30 days of hiding in the desert, the Mashiach arrives. The Midrash says he goes to Hebron, he wakes up the Avot, he brings them out of the Machpelah. Very beautiful. I once asked my rabbi, Rav Simcha Wasserman, will it be like that? He said it will be exactly like that. The birth process, it looks like the opposite. That's emunah. Men have no idea about that. A man begins the process, that's all. The woman goes through that. That's male and female. This is everything. Pesach is a blaze of miracles. Hashem does it all, no problem. Then you walk through the desert like through a pregnancy. Do you know in Kabbalat, you know why the Jewish people went through the ocean? Because when a woman gives birth, the waters break. The Jewish people go through waters that split. That's the birth of the Jewish people. Then they walk through the desert, day after day after day, through the hot desert with no life force till they get to Sinai. Then you can stand in relationship with Hashem, when you produce something yourself. There's the male phase, which is easy, and the female phase, which is the long, drawn-out process of making it real. The Rambam says that life is like standing on a dark plain on a stormy night. You stand there beaten by the rain, lashed by the wind, hopelessly lost. And at the moment of your greatest despair, suddenly there's a flash of lightning. And in that moment you see the road clearer than by day. And as you see it, the light disappears. And for the rest of the night you walk through the storm on memory alone of a flash of light that you once saw. Some people see more light, some people see less, but no one walks in the light. Let me tell you a story. This is a true story. These days you have to tell true stories because people Google what you say. All my stories are true. Some happened and some didn't, but they're all true. But anyway, here's a true story. By the way, before I tell you that, listen to this. Look up in the Maharal, Netiv HaEmunah. The Maharal teaches Emunah, and he quotes an ancient source called the Aruch. And the Aruch tells the story of male and female and Emunah. This is called the story of the Boar and the Chulda. A boar is a pit in the ground, and a chulda is a wildcat or a ferret or some small animal that's dangerous. By the way, according to Kabbalat, this is called female and male as well. But that's a deeper dimension. But I'll tell you the story. Listen carefully, you need to know this. The Aruch says, and the Maharal speaks it out in great detail, look it up, it's very clear and very straightforward. Simple story level. There was a young woman journeying to see her father. She was dressed in her finest, looking beautiful. And on that journey, she got lost. She strayed into a wilderness, and accidentally she fell into a bore. It was very deep, she couldn't climb out, she certainly would have died. She began crying, and a young man happened to be walking nearby. He heard her cries. He walked over and he looked into the bore, and he saw a woman. He said, "Who are you?" She said her name. She was a Jewish girl. He was a young Jewish man. He was a Kohen, in fact. He said, "Are you human?" He thought maybe she was one of the Shadim, the Twilight Zone forces of the desert. She said, "I'm human." He said, "Make an oath. Make a shvuah. I want you to swear." How would that help, by the way? Won't a liar swear that they're telling the truth? Yes, beautiful. To swear, you need Hashem's name. Only the good side can do that, not the dark side. She made an oath. He said, "Great, I believe you. If I save you, will you marry me?" She said, "Yes." Didn't have much choice, did she? He lifted her out of the pit, and he wanted to consummate the marriage on the spot. She said, "That's not decent. That's not how we behave. I will go back to my town and prepare for the wedding. You go back to your town and give me time. Then you come and meet my parents, and then we'll get married." So the young man agreed. Now they wanted to make a engagement, a vort. What do you call it? A what? Yeah, one of those. But to do that, you need witnesses. You have Eidim to do that? Yeah. In Jewish law, to make a commitment like that, you need 2 witnesses, 2 Eidim. There were no Eidim, it was a desert. So they decided they would take the only 2 Eidim present, the Boar and a chulda that was running past. The Kabbalists say, this is the same as Moshe Rabbeinu, taking heaven and earth to be witnesses for us. You don't want humans. You want things that are reliable. Anyway, so they decided the Boar and the chulda will be their witnesses. They promised to marry. She went back to her town and began preparing for the wedding. He went back to his town and forgot. We're talking male, you understand? Male. I always say, you leave a husband babysitting, the kid's life's in danger. He's going to get distracted and think about, In fact, it's even more embarrassing than that. It says, as soon as she was out of sight, he forgot. Okay, sometime later he met another woman. Eventually they got married. She became pregnant. She had a child. The child fell into a bore and died. She became pregnant, had a second child. Child was bitten by a chulda. So she said to her husband, and then he remembered the story. And he told her. Oh, she said, if that's true, you divorce me. You go back to the town that you remember that girl. You see, it's a woman who's waiting and a woman who's teaching him. He divorced her. He traveled to the town that he remembered the girl said she came from, and he found her father. He said, I've come to see your daughter. The father said, unfortunately, no one can see her. She's lost her mind from waiting. She's just insane. People go near, she shreds their clothing. Unfortunately, it's too late. He begged to be allowed to see her. He went into the girl the room. She started shredding his clothing. He said to her, Boar and Chulda, and she recognized him. And then she revealed to him that she'd been pretending to be insane so that nobody else could marry her, waiting for him to come. They had a happy marriage together. They had children. What's being taught here? Male and female. What is male? Male is clarification. Let's get it clear. 100% clear. Let's get it doubly clear. Let's get it, and then instant results. Instant gratification. Staying power, 0. The female, clarification, 0. Wanders into a desert, no idea where she is, falls into a ball. Staying power, unbelievable. You gave your word. You said you'd wait. It's not logical. That's got nothing to do with it. We're talking emunah. You need both. You need a marriage in here. You need clarification. And to the extent that you get the clarity, you need to walk the walk. You're not a human being with only one of those. Let me tell you a story. I'll finish with this. In 1942, the Japanese invaded the Philippines. 1944, just before the end of the war, they left. But a strange series of incidents occurred in the Filipino jungle, because one Japanese soldier got left behind. His name was Lieutenant Hiru Onoda, who was a highly intelligent officer trained in jungle survival. And because he was left behind, he carried on fighting the war by himself. You know, Japanese orders were fight to the death, no surrender. So single-handedly, in the jungle, he carried on fighting the war, killed 30 people. Okay, this went on for a long time. It went on for 30 years. 30 years. I've seen a photograph, 54 years old, in his uniform with the patches with his gun. 1974, the Japanese government, you know, they were getting complaints. They sent a soldier called Major Suzuki into the jungle, and he found him. He said, Onoda, what are you doing? He said, I'm doing my duty. He said to him, do you know the war's over? He said, of course I'm not a fool. He said, if you know the war's over, what are you doing? You're being illogical. Onoda said, a soldier's duty not to be logical. The soldier's duty is to do his duty. If every soldier starts thinking logically, what sort of army do you have? He was unable to convince him to go home. Suzuki left and Onoda carried on fighting the war. The Japanese government found a plan. They found the elderly officer who'd been his commanding officer during the war. They sent him back into the jungle with the original Japanese demobilization order. He called him to attention. He read him the order to lay down weapons. Onoda handed over his gun. He went back to Japan. The Filipinos called him a hero. They bought him a new blue suit. It's very emotional. He arrived in Tokyo airport, saw his parents after 30 years. He came back to a modern industrial Japan. It's a very emotional story. By the way, he just died about 2 years ago. After the war, he started a school of jungle resourcefulness training and survival in South America. Interesting man. Imagine you speaking to him in the jungle. Onoda, let's go. He says, no. You say, why? He says, because I'm doing my duty. You say to him, but you're being illogical. He says, you're talking this, I'm doing this. Talk about emunah. Doesn't get better than that. Talk about staying power and commitment and loyalty. But he's doing something wrong, isn't he? So I asked a group of school children in London. I said, what was he doing wrong? One young girl put up her hand. She said he had emunah, but he did not have emet. Right. You need both. It's got to be right and true, and then you've got to walk the walk for the rest of your life. One without the other is ridiculous. You know what you look like if you have emet and you cannot live up to it? You're a hypocrite. It's like the famous British philosopher of the last century. He taught his students the most sublime moral and ethical philosophy. Ethics and morals. One morning the students found him crawling out of a place of very disgusting ill repute. They said, Professor, how can you teach us such incredible morals and behave like this? He said, what's the problem? Does a mathematician have to be a triangle? Well, if you're Jewish, yes, you do. And by the way, what do you look like if you have this without this? Very dangerous. People ready to kill and die. Nothing here. You've got to have both. It's got to be right and true. The Jewish agenda is a history of verification and corroboration and logic. And the most powerful minds in history, the Torah sages, who have handed it down with incredible corroboration and logic verification. As close as it gets to. But that's not enough. You also need the womanly skill of walking through the desert, what the Ramban calls Midbar Ha'amim, walking through the desert of life's tortures and genocidal attacks. Amazingly, we're still here. We're the only ones who are still here. That's the long walk that will bring the final birth into existence. And therefore, as we prepare for receiving the Torah, the message is that we have to be male and female, we have to have a marriage. The men have to study Torah and get it clear. The women have to teach character. It's no accident that the child is raised for the first few years by the mother. That's what forms the character. She understands what strength of character is. Men would collapse under that. They always did. In Egypt, the men collapsed. The women pulled us through. Always. On your narrow shoulders, ladies. rest of the future of the Jewish people. Don't look at us. And therefore, that's the work. The work is clarity, investigation of Jewish history, understanding the great minds of the sages, both in the prophetic era and the post-prophetic era, right, when the world went dark 2,300 years ago. And we moved into the phase of the oral law, which is an incredible thing to understand. What does that mean? The genius and creativity of the Jewish people being loyal to a story that was once clear, walking through the night, remembering the flashes of lightning that we saw, with a loyalty that it takes to generate a birth. And if we can do that, be able to walk the long walk of history and bring an ultimate birth into existence, which is a true Sinai experience. Thank you.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.